Week 5 of the NFL season is here. Last week I went 13-3 in my picks for the week, which was the response I needed after an abysmal 8-8 in week 3, which puts me after 4 weeks of the season with a record of 44-20. Without further ado, let's get right into the week 5 NFL predictions. As always, we begin with Thursday Night Football, and this week for Thursday Night Football, the Bears and the Commanders. Now, I will admit, I have been a very harsh critic on primetime football for a while now, especially Thursday Night Football. But I think this game has the potential to be interesting, believe it or not, as this is a battle between two teams that could have won last week, and in the Bears' case, they should have won. But I think both of these teams are coming off of at least morale victories after what happened to each of these teams the week before, the Bears getting embarrassed by the Chiefs and the Commanders getting embarrassed by the Bills. I actually think this game is going to be pretty high scoring, believe it or not. I think the Commanders win this game, but the line right now is at -7. I think in an offensive battle, the Commanders win, but the Bears, they cover in this matchup. As I am predicting the over in this game, whatever it is, I anticipate that both these offenses, I think they have confidence after last week despite falling short, but give me the Commanders in a game where it's going to simply come down to who has the ball last. Jaguars and Bills. I went against the Bills last week, and it came back to haunt me. The Bills, they lost Tre'Davious White for the season with an Achilles injury. So that is going to be a huge detriment to the Bills moving forward, I believe. But it's possible that Von Miller will be playing this week. However, I am going against the Bills once again this week. And it's not that I have animosity towards the Bills. I don't at all. I'm not underestimating them at all. I just think that this particular week, I think works in the Jaguars' favor. The Bills are coming off of that big win against the Dolphins, a division rival, and now they go across the pond to take on the Jaguars, a team that historically does well in London. A team that has already been there for an entire week. So they are not dealing with the travel conditions this week that the Bills are. The Jaguars, they are acclimated to London at this point, and I think it works in their favor. I'm picking the Jaguars to pull off this upset, and worst case scenario, I feel like the Jaguars do cover in this game. The line right now is 5.5 points. I could definitely see worst case scenario, Jaguars lose by 3 points. Because the Jaguars, I think it's only a matter of time until this offense really starts to get going. I think last week was a get-right game for them over the Falcons. And I think they upset the Bills this week, and they make it 2 in a row. As historically, this team is good in London. Texans and Falcons. The Falcons are coming off of an embarrassing performance offensively against the Jaguars in London and in Andy's room. As Bijan Robinson right now is the only bright spot on the Falcons, and it's not at the fault of anybody except for Arthur Smith and maybe Desmond Ridder. As I talked about recently about how the Falcons aren't using Kyle Pitts and Drake London correctly. Because they drafted them in the top 10, Kyle Pitts top 5, but they're not used properly. And I also think that the Falcons, I think it's in their best interest to turn to Taylor Heineke, as Desmond Ridder has not looked good at all in the last 2 weeks. Only 13 points in the last 2 games. At least Bijan Robinson had a good day against the Jaguars last week. I think he has a good day again this week, but the Texans are a much better team right now. They have won 2 in a row. They're on a 2-game winning streak. I can trust the Texans enough to pick them to win games because they have shown these last 2 weeks that they're capable of winning games. They're a team that's on the rise. They've got the right coach in D'Amico Ryans. And I think Arthur Smith, if the Falcons indeed lose this game to fall to 2-3 on the year, I do think that it is time for them to at least put him on the hot seat. Panthers and Lions. For those of you that are not tuning in for the first time to this channel, you likely know where I'm going with this. The Lions played on Thursday night last week, so they get the rest advantage over the Panthers. But even without the rest advantage, I think the Lions would win this game pretty easily. Even if this was a short week, I think they'd win pretty easily anyway. As the Panthers are 0-4, Bryce Young has struggled so far this season. I think it's in the Panthers' best interest if they put Andy Dalton under center for the rest of the season. Because when I saw the Panthers against the Seahawks with Andy Dalton at quarterback, they looked like a much better team. And they might as well, because there's no reason for them to tank, because the Bears have their first round pick as part of the deal to move up to number 1 to draft Bryce Young, which I think that's the big reason why they don't want to play Andy Dalton if they don't have to, because the pressure is on them to get Bryce Young as much game action as possible, even if he truly isn't ready for the moment. And I'm picking the Lions to dominate this game. Jameson Williams is coming back, as he had his suspension reduced, so he is back this week. And I think this is the week that Jahmyr Gibbs finally gets going. And I am calling it. Jahmyr Gibbs scores his first touchdown in a dominant victory for the Lions. I do not think this game is going to be close at all. Titans and Colts. Anthony Richardson had a good performance for the Colts last week after being in the concussion protocol last week, missing the game against the Ravens. The Colts lost in overtime to the Rams, their second straight game that went to overtime. And for the Titans, dominant win over the Bengals. Even though the Bengals are struggling to begin the season, I still think the Bengals are going to get better as the season goes along. So I do think this is a confidence booster for the Titans. Derrick Henry had a very good performance last week, and I think he carries that momentum into this week, as I think Derrick Henry once again has a good performance against the Colts. And the Titans have also won 5 straight games against the Colts, and I think they make it 6 in a row. Even though Anthony Richardson, he has had a good season so far, I just think this Titans team, I think they are a little more confident than the Colts are, with the Titans coming off of a big dominant win, while the Colts are coming off of an overtime heartbreak. I am taking the Titans. Giants and Dolphins. The Dolphins are coming off of their first loss of the year to the Bills. And the Dolphins right now are a bottom 3 defense. However, they go up against the Giants this week, who once again got embarrassed in primetime. 3 games for the Giants in primetime so far, and they have gotten embarrassed every single time. Now, 2 of them I can be accepting of, because the Cowboys and 49ers, despite the Cowboys losing to the Cardinals a couple weeks ago, they're still one of the top teams in the NFC. But Daniel Jones was sacked 11 times against the Seahawks defense. And I think this is a get-right game for the Dolphins. After taking their first loss of the year, I think their defense is going to have a big game. They're going to get to Daniel Jones easily. And I think this game will not even be close. I mean, Vegas has the Dolphins at about a 10.5 to 11-point favorite. I think the Dolphins win and easily cover, as this feels like a layup for the Dolphins, but you never know in the NFL. But until the Giants can show that they can be competitive, I can't pick them to win any games. But before I get to the next game, I do want to mention for the Giants-Dolphins, Saquon Barkley's status is up in the air for this game. Even if Saquon Barkley does play, I don't think it helps the Giants all that much. I still think the Dolphins should win that game pretty easily, with or without Saquon Barkley. Saints and Patriots. The Patriots are coming off of a very abysmal performance against the Cowboys, while the Saints, they're coming off of their second consecutive loss. On the bright side for the Saints, however, Alvin Kamara is back, and Alvin Kamara, he provides a spark for that Saints offense. And Derek Carr, he was banged up in the game last week. So I don't know what to think of the Saints right now, but I know what to think of the Patriots. The Patriots, they are going through injuries on the defense. Christian Gonzalez injured. Matt Judon injured. I think that opens up a little bit of Chris Olave and Alvin Kamara to have big games on this Patriots defense. I think the Saints win. I am surprised the Patriots are favored in this game after their performance against the Cowboys on the road last week. I get that Bill Belichick is arguably the greatest NFL coach of all time, but with the way the Patriots have been this season so far, I don't get why they're favored in this game. If somebody can help me out, I'd appreciate it. But I am picking the Saints to pull off this upset, which this feels like a free play right here to go with the Saints. Even though the Saints have not been good the last 5 quarters of action. Ravens and Steelers. The Steelers, I think, are definitely being held back by Matt Canada. As I don't blame Steelers fans for wanting them to find a new offensive coordinator. I think he is ruining Kenny Pickett's full potential. I think he's really holding him and that Steelers offense back. As they do have the playmakers on offense to succeed, but they're being held back by Matt Canada. And Mike Tomlin is one of the better coaches in the NFL. With no matter what he has on his staff, on his team, they somehow finish above 500. But with the way the offense is going right now, they are not going to come close to finishing 500. Their defense is going to have to carry them throughout the rest of the season if they want to finish 500. But no matter who is at quarterback, whether it's Kenny Pickett or Mitch Trubisky, as Kenny Pickett did avoid a major injury last week, I just think this Ravens team with a healthy Lamar Jackson, as the last couple of seasons, the Ravens have been held back with injuries. I think as long as Lamar Jackson stays healthy, the Ravens are a legitimate contender to win the AFC. And I am picking the Ravens to win this game, despite this being a road game for the Ravens, as it's a rivalry game. And when you have division rivals going at it, you can throw out everything from the history to the stats and the records, but I do think the Ravens, they do get it done. Eagles and Rams. Good news for the Rams. Cooper Kupp is going to start practicing again this week. As far as him returning to game action, it is unknown when he's going to do that. But the fact that Cooper Kupp is back to practicing, that is big for the Rams. As I feel like the Rams are in pretty good shape to make a run at the playoffs. As I felt like after the first 4 weeks, if the Rams were at least 2-2, I think they're in a good position to make a playoff push. Puka Nacua scored his first touchdown of his career last week against the Colts in overtime, the game-winning touchdown, which that was a sight to see, as Puka Nacua is taking the NFL by storm in this early part of the NFL season. For the Eagles, a big concern I have for the Eagles is the Eagles, they're not as dominant as I thought they were going to be this season. As they have yet to really dominate against teams. As week 1, they get out to a big lead against the Patriots. Then the second half, the Patriots make it a game. Week 2, big lead against the Vikings. Then the Vikings, they start to make a comeback late in the game and make it a game. Then in week 3 against the Buccaneers on Monday Night Football, that is considerably a dominant win. But the Buccaneers, they had some chances to make that game a lot closer than what it was. And then last week against the Commanders, it took overtime to get it done against the Commanders. But the Commanders, they're a team that has given the Eagles fits recently, as that seems to be the Eagles' sort of kryptonite to an extent, the Commanders, because there's been a few times where the Commanders, where they give the Eagles fits, but the Eagles, more often than not, they rise up to the occasion, and they did that last week, winning in overtime. But I'm going with the Eagles to win this matchup. I do think that this has the potential of being a high-scoring game. But I am picking the Eagles to win this at the end of the day, as I do think the Rams, they do have some confidence going for them. With being 2-2, being in a much better spot than a lot of people thought they would be coming into the season, I think the Eagles win this game. But if Cooper Kupp comes back sooner rather than later, I think the Rams can make a run. Bengals and Cardinals. The Bengals are coming off of an abysmal performance against the Titans last week, as once again the Bengals offense struggles to generate offense, while the Cardinals, despite being only a one-win team, they're playing a lot better so far this season than I thought they were going to. As they have beaten the Cowboys, they held their own against the 49ers for as long as they could, but the 49ers, they are a juggernaut. But I will say, they have a gem in Michael Wilson, a massive steal in the draft, as he scored his first 2 touchdowns of his career last week against the 49ers. I do think that Michael Wilson is going to have a good rest of the season, as I think things, they do line up for him to be this season's Christian Watson. But I do think the Bengals, they do win this game. I do think this is a get-right game for the Bengals. But with what we've seen from the Cardinals so far this season, they are a scrappy team. Despite a lot of people thinking that the Cardinals were only going to win like maybe 2 or 3 games this season, they are a very scrappy team. And perhaps maybe the Cardinals right now, they are what the Lions were a couple years ago, a team that wasn't winning many games, but they're a scrappy team and won't be an easy win for anybody. But I do think the Bengals, I think this is the game where they get back on the right track, and it's a get-right game for them. Jets and Broncos. And even though each of these teams only have 1 win so far on the year, I think that this game needs to have a lot of hype built around it. In fact, in the preseason, I felt like there was a lot of hype surrounding this game. But both of these teams, they are not who everybody thought they were going to be. But I think a lot of people have forgotten by now that the Jets and Broncos, they have got beef with each other. In the offseason, Sean Payton made a statement saying Jets offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett had the worst coaching performance of all time when he was the coach for the Broncos last season and got fired after week 16. And I think a lot of people have forgotten about the beef that those two had in the offseason. And I have a feeling that something big is going to go down in this game. I would not be surprised if there were some ejections in this game. And it's not that I want that to happen. I don't. But I have a feeling that with these teams having beef with each other, I think that has the potential of happening. Do I want it to happen? No. Because I want the game to be clean, and I get that they have beef with each other, but you got to respect your competitors. But I have a feeling that they are not going to in this game. And I'm picking the Jets to win this game. As they lost last week to the Chiefs in what many people are calling controversial fashion. Robert Saleh was heated. He was screaming at the official the entire final 5 minutes of that game. And rightfully so. As I feel like there's pressure on Robert Saleh, especially when there are reports that you've lost the locker room because you have an attachment to Zach Wilson. But in a game where I have to pick somebody to win because both teams only have 1 win on the year so far, I think the Jets win this game because I have been more impressed with what I've seen from the Jets so far this season than the Broncos. Chiefs and Vikings. The Chiefs picked up a win on Sunday Night Football last week against the Jets, and what I have already mentioned, where many people thought it was very controversial how they won, as I have seen it so many times in the last 48 hours on my timelines on any social media platform about how it was very controversial, which you could say that. I do think that the flag was thrown pretty late, but I did talk about how the Jets were going to make that a game. The Jets defense was going to keep them in it from start to finish, as it looked like it was getting away from them early on, but they stayed in it. Zach Wilson had the best game of his career, but the Jets fall short. And now the Chiefs go on the road to take on a Vikings team that picked up their first win of the season last week. And I think this is going to be the highest scoring game of the week. I expect this to be a back and forth game, as each of these teams, they have the playmakers to make this a high scoring game. And I think the Chiefs, they win this game for the simple fact that both defenses, they have not looked good for most of the season, but they will simply have the ball last in this game. And I think that's going to be the difference in this matchup. I think the Chiefs, they pick up the win. I think the Vikings, they have what it takes to make this a game. I think it's a track meet of a game where the Chiefs win in the final possession. Cowboys and 49ers. What a spectacle this is going to be. Two of the strongest teams in the NFC going at it in prime time. Despite the Cowboys losing to the Cardinals on the road a couple weeks ago, with the way the Cardinals have played in the first 4 weeks of the year, and with the way the Cowboys were dominant against the Patriots last week, I think it's evident that that game against the Cardinals was just a fluke for the Cowboys. And you can even argue that it was a fluke, as this was the first game they were without Trayvon Diggs for the rest of the year, as he tore his ACL in practice earlier in that week. So it was tough to adapt to that first game, but they got back on the right track last week against the Patriots, and they go on the road to take on their kryptonite, the team that has ended their season the last 2 years, the 49ers. And it is just really hard to pick against the 49ers with the way they have been this season. They have looked like the most complete team in the NFL so far this season, as they have really been dominant against everybody they've played so far. Even the Rams in week 2, when that game was closer than what I was anticipating, what a lot of people were anticipating. But until the 49ers, until they lose a game, I'm not picking them to lose. As this 49ers team, they look too talented right now to bet against. So I am picking the 49ers to win this matchup on Sunday Night Football, and the Cowboys suffer another loss against the 49ers, who has been their kryptonite in recent years. Wrapping up week 5 with Monday Night Football, Packers and Raiders. The Packers played on Thursday night last week, so they get Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of rest. So over 10 days rest coming into this game, while the Raiders are coming off of a heartbreaker against the Chargers in a game where they could have tied the game, but Aiden O'Connell threw an interception late in that game, and the Raiders couldn't get the ball back to try to tie the game up. However, Josh Jacobs appears to have his confidence back. As last week I did say that it felt like to me they were kind of sabotaging Josh Jacobs a little bit. But he found the end zone for the first time this season. He could have had a second touchdown, but it was determined he was down before he crossed the goal line. Either way, the leading rusher last year in the NFL is back, I do believe. And with how David Montgomery did against the Packers defense last week, I think Josh Jacobs is in line for another big game. And despite the Packers having that rest advantage, which I think that's a big reason why they're a 1.5 favorite at this moment, I think also it's because Jimmy Garoppolo's status is in question, as he did not play last week, as he was in the concussion protocol. The question is Jimmy Garoppolo going to clear concussion protocol in time for Monday night? I would lean towards yes. And with Josh Jacobs being confident after scoring his first touchdown of the year, as he was due for a touchdown. I'm going to pick the Raiders to win this game, whether or not Jimmy Garoppolo is the quarterback or not. Because if Jimmy Garoppolo plays, then he's going to use his intelligence to win this game, as he has a good football IQ. But if he's not, I think that Josh Jacobs carries the Raiders to victory. To an extent, how Dave Montgomery did last week by scoring 3 touchdowns. So I'm picking the Raiders to win on Monday night, to bounce back from the last 2 weeks of heartbreak as they lost close games to the Steelers and the Chargers in back-to-back weeks. And that will do it for my Week 5 predictions. Comment your Week 5 predictions down below and like the video. Share the video with your friends, as this channel has really been growing in the last month, and your support means a lot to me. This channel would be nowhere without all of you. Enjoy the football this weekend, and until next time.